in terms of the Nazis taking power. And I think it's then, at this stage, this is where the question of inevitability of Hitler could take power. It wasn't inevitable. The German ruling class were worried, and actually if the left had made a move, I think in the conditions of Germany they would have backed away from the option. It's also the case that, to be honest, perfectly honest about it, if the German working class and its organisation had fought, there would have been a civil war in Germany, in which actually the advantage could well have been with the working class. And the reason I say that is the German left contained the largest social democratic party in the world, the SPD, and the largest communist party outside of Russia in the world. To give you an idea of the SPD's strength, its paramilitary wing, and it had a paramilitary wing, the Reichsbanner, which was sworn to defend the Weimar Constitution, not to make a working class revolution, but to defend the liberal constitution of Germany, had 3 million members. You know, that's not an insignificant force in terms of the idea on the street, and it's much bigger than what the Nazis could put on the streets. The German Communist Party grew from 170,000 members in 1930, quite a sizable organisation, 170,000. It grew to 360,000 members by the end of 1932. And in Berlin, the communists had 30,000 members alone in the city and a third of the popular vote. So these were really sizable organisations. But there was a disparity between the two organisations, not just in size. The SPD, the German, in September 1930, in the factory councils, this is the equivalent of shop stewards' organisation in Germany, but the factory councils were elected on party tickets. 89.9% of the factory council delegates were elected on the SPD ticket. In other words, they dominated inside the workplaces and the unions. Right? They controlled absolutely fundamentally the organised working class movement in Germany. In Berlin, by 1930, in contrast, the KPD, the Communist Party's membership in Berlin, 51% of it was unemployed. And the subsequent growth was, for the communists, was almost entirely located among young, unemployed people. And it had very little influence in terms of the trade unions. It was not just a minority, a majority of its members were organised in street sales, not in factory sales. So it was increasingly a party of unemployed, young and quite rootless people in terms of it. So there was a difference in the two parties. The SPD remained hegemonic in the organised working class. The KPD was largely excluded from the unions, the factory councils, and indeed even from the factories. And the importance of that is that with everything else around, if you want to talk about mass strikes to defeat fascism, which is certainly one of the issues I'll just go into in a second, that would have required and necessitated a united front response, where the left would have had to work together. The communists were not capable of calling on their own mass strikes. They did it rhetorically, but they were not capable of pulling them off. There was also a very profound difference in strategy. The SPD's Rudolf Hilferding argued Germany is not Italy. In other words, Italy was a backward country where fascism could come to power. This was inconceivable in Germany, democratic Germany, and the institutions of the German states, which had been created after 1918, were strong enough to stop any fascist takeover. The whole SPD strategy then became of maintaining those institutions of the state against a Nazi threat, and indeed a communist threat, because they violently hated the communists as well. That meant the SPD, through that period, would end up supporting right-wing governments, in effect, and including Marshal Hindenburg, in doing that. Because, as I said, in the Reichstag, their votes were quite fundamental to beat both the Nazis and the Communist Party. And they were becoming more and more compromised inside this game. And of course, it meant as well that members were being told, above all, respect the Constitution. And this was a sizable party. I mean, for instance, it had control of the police in Prussia. It's hard to think of this, but the police were run by the Social Democrats, and its members in Prussia were Social Democrats. The communists responded in line with Stalin's analysis of the situation after the Wall Street crash, which was that this was a global revolutionary situation, by branding the SPD as social fascists, by arguing that there was a Nazis and there were social fascists, and both were equal threats, and both would support the construction of fascism. bear with me, it's a fairly lunatic analysis, okay? But arguing that really, in essence, arguing that SPD were the biggest threat, the biggest enemy. This was not so lunatic if you were a young communist, given what had happened to you being shot down on the streets of Berlin by the Social Democratic police, or remembering Rosa Luxemburg and Karl Liebknecht. There was a certain element of rationality to it, but obviously it was bizarre that, you know, essentially the communists arguing that the Social Democrats were a greater threat. And to give you an illustration of what I think was possible, and there could have been resistance in Germany, is worth going through some key moments. Just bear with me. The first was the dismissal by the right-wing government of, I think it's von Papen, of the Prussian Social Democratic government. Prussia includes Berlin, so really crucial. They dismissed the government. This was the key test for the SPD. You had mass membership, you had the police. What happened? One eyewitness recounts that the response of the SPD, and the evening prior to this decision, great mass rallies took place in Berlin and other cities. The newspaper Vorwärts, the Social Democratic daily, reported when the speakers claimed the German working class's determination to wage a united struggle against the fascist danger, people cried freedom, freedom, tens of thousands of them. But then, as soon as the government's provocation became known, the report says, the members of the Reich banner and the SPD membership, and many of the social clubs involved with the SPD, rushed to their assembly points, the fixed assembly points where they've been told to muster in event of a fascist danger, bringing with them weapons, improvised weapons, weapons that are obtained of different kinds. Only to be met with a leaflet put out by the SPD leadership in which they warned against provocations and advised waiting for the decisions of responsible leaders. The responsible leaders decided to do nothing, and there was not 1 hour of general strike or protest, and the Prussian government was dismissed without any strikes or protest. There's clearly evidence here of a mood to fight. And if the communists had not been so sectarian, they could have intervened in this situation, but of course they were more or less chewing on the suppression of the Prussian government in terms. And it continues. And one eyewitness actually took reports of the news that Hindenburg had appointed Hitler Chancellor. He said the news of the appointment brought out were in fact the most impressive demonstrations of the German working class's will to resist. In the afternoon and the evening of 30th of January, spontaneous and violent mass demonstrations took place in German cities. Delegations from the factories from all parts of the country arrived on the same day in Berlin, expecting battle orders from the SPD and trade union leadership. The official history of the German union IG Metall reports that in this situation, quote, the working class waited in vain for a signal to act. And indeed, Vorwärts produced a special issue saying, in the face of a government that threatens a coup d'etat, social democracy stands firm of constitution and legality. But even then, it kept going. Willy Brandt, who had become a post-war social democratic chancellor, reported in a city of Lübeck in the Baltic coast that even after Hitler came to power, there was still a mood to fight. He recalls a reaction to the arrest of an SPD leader in the city. The workers of Lübeck were highly incensed. In every factory they met and demanded the proclamation of a general strike in order to enforce labour's release. I was a member of a delegation that was to present these demands to the chairman of the local branch of the Free Trade Unions. When we put the resolution on his table, he refused to even read it and asked us to take it back at once. We did not know the law, he said. Despite that, a strike went ahead, and on the 19th of February, in 1933, once the Nazis were in power, 15,000 people demonstrated and labour was released. Now, it shows there was a willingness to fight, but the left were unable to pull their act together. And the communists, meanwhile, were busily calling for general strikes, which they couldn't pull off, and at the same time also blithely going around saying that really not to worry, that Hitler would not last for long after Hitler overturned. The German poet Victor Serge recounts meeting Bertolt Brecht in a cafe in Berlin, where Brecht told him the day after Hitler took power, laughing, "We will soon be in power ourselves." Not long after that, Brecht went to Denmark, having realised that where things were going in terms of that.